Hello, and welcome back to the channel. Today, we're journeying deep into the sun-scorched sands of Egypt, where a story of ambition, discovery, and a terrifying ancient power unfolds. Fasten your seatbelts, because this isn't your typical history lesson. This is a tale of a curse that slept for millennia, waiting for the right moment to awaken. Our story begins with Dr. Alistair Finch, a brilliant but notoriously obsessive Egyptologist. For decades, he was ridiculed by his peers for his fixation on a figure largely considered myth, Pharaoh Akenra, the Shadow King. Legends whispered of a ruler who didn't just command armies, but commanded the very essence of darkness through forbidden sorcery. Mainstream academia dismissed these tales as folklore, but Finch believed. He spent his life deciphering obscure hieroglyphs and forgotten papyri, convinced that Akenra was real and that his tomb held secrets that would rewrite history. Finally, after years of dead ends, a breakthrough. A satellite scan revealed an anomaly deep in a remote, uncharted valley west of Luxor. It was a structure buried far beneath the dunes, a location no one had ever thought to look. This had to be it. Finch assembled a small elite team. Kenji Tanaka, a pragmatic tech genius who handled their ground-penetrating radar. Dr. Elena Vance, a cautious but sharp linguist and hieroglyph expert. And Ben Carter, the rugged logistics coordinator who could make the impossible happen in the middle of nowhere. Together, they secured funding and set off, their hearts pounding with a mix of excitement and trepidation. The desert is a harsh mistress. For weeks, they battled sandstorms and blistering heat. Their equipment malfunctioned, and morale began to fray. Kenji's advanced radar kept giving bizarre, fluctuating readings, as if something deep underground was actively interfering with the signal. Elena found the isolation unnerving, often remarking that she felt as though they were being watched by the endless, silent dunes. Only Finch's unwavering determination kept them going. He'd point to the strange energy patterns on Kenji's monitor and declare, "It's him. Akenra is protecting his secrets. We're close." And then they found it. A single dark stone slab, almost completely swallowed by the sand, marked with a symbol none of them recognized, a serpent devouring the sun. It was unlike any known dynastic seal. As their crew worked to clear the entrance, a sudden, unnatural wind kicked up, whipping sand into their faces and extinguishing their lanterns. The air grew cold, a stark contrast to the oppressive desert heat just moments before. Ben, ever the practical one, brushed it off as a freak weather event, but Elena couldn't shake a feeling of profound dread. She noticed the local workers they'd hired were murmuring, their eyes wide with fear, before they packed their tools and refused to go any further. Speaking of a gate of shadows, undeterred, Finch, Elena, Kenji, and Ben pressed on alone. They heaved the stone slab aside, revealing a steep, dark staircase descending into the earth. The air that rushed out was stale and reeked of decay and something else. Something metallic and vaguely spicy, like old incense and dried blood. Lighting their powerful torches, they began their descent. The walls were not covered in the usual glorious depictions of gods and the afterlife. Instead, they were etched with disturbing scenes of shadow-like figures performing grotesque rituals and inscriptions that Elena struggled to translate. They weren't prayers to Osiris or Anubis. They were incantations, binding spells, and warnings. One recurring phrase chilled her to the bone. "Let not the breath of the living disturb the sleep of the Shadow King, lest they serve him in the eternal darkness." The descent felt endless. The silence was absolute, broken only by their footsteps and the dripping of water from an unknown source. Kenji's equipment started going haywire. His compass spun uselessly, and his communication gear emitted nothing but static. "There's some kind of electromagnetic field down here," he whispered, his voice trembling slightly. "It's off the charts. It's not natural." Finch, however, was ecstatic. To him, this was not a warning. It was proof. proof that Akenra's power was real and tangible. Finally, they reached the antechamber. It was vast, and in its center stood a single obsidian sarcophagus, polished to a mirror-like finish. There were no golden treasures, no piles of jewels, just the black coffin, which seemed to absorb the light from their torches. Elena approached the sarcophagus, her fingers tracing the intricate carvings. "Alistair, this is wrong," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "These aren't protective wards, they're locks. They're designed to keep something asterisk in asterisk, not to keep intruders out." But Finch was deaf to her warnings. He was standing before the discovery of a lifetime. "Ben, the crowbars," he ordered, his eyes gleaming with a manic light. As Ben and Kenji wedged their tools into the lid of the sarcophagus, a low rumbling sound started, vibrating through the stone floor. Dust trickled from the ceiling. The torchlights began to flicker violently, casting long dancing shadows that seemed to writhe and twist on the walls. "Maybe we should stop and rethink this," Ben grunted, struggling against the lid. But with a final echoing crack, the great stone lid shifted. A puff of black, dust-like particles erupted from the opening, swirling in the air like a cloud of insects before settling. For a moment, nothing happened. They peered inside. It was empty. Completely, utterly empty. Confusion turned to horror. "Where is he?" Finch stammered, his triumph turning to ash. It was then that Kenji screamed. He was clutching his head, his eyes rolling back. On the back of his neck, a dark, snake-like mark was rapidly appearing, branding itself onto his skin. He collapsed, convulsing, before falling unervingly still. The mark on his neck glowed faintly, then faded. Elena rushed to his side, but there was no pulse. He was gone. Panic set in. "It's a gas, some kind of preserved neurotoxin." Ben yelled, pulling his shirt over his mouth. But it wasn't a gas. It was the curse. They had unleashed it. The journey back to the surface was a nightmare. The shadows on the walls were no longer just shadows. They moved on their own, elongating, reaching for them. Whispers echoed from the darkness, speaking their names. Ben was the next to fall. As they scrambled up the stairs, a section of the wall crumbled, and a shadowy tendril shot out, wrapping around his ankle. He was dragged screaming into the darkness of the collapsing passage. Finch and Elena didn't dare look back. They burst out into the moonlight, gasping for air, their minds reeling. They had to warn someone. But the curse wasn't confined to the tomb. Back at their camp, things got worse. Finch became paranoid and withdrawn, locking himself in his tent, frantically poring over the rubbings Elena had taken from the walls. He'd mutter about the vessel and the gateway. Elena, meanwhile, was plagued by horrific nightmares. She'd see Akenra, not as a man, but as a towering figure of pure shadow, his eyes burning like embers. She would wake up screaming, with faint, shadowy marks on her arms that would vanish by morning. The curse wasn't just a sudden killer. It was a creeping, psychological terror. The final act took place on a moonless night. Elena woke to find Finch gone. She found him back at the tomb's entrance, chanting the incantations from the walls. His body was contorted, and his voice was a deep, guttural rasp that wasn't his own. He turned to face her, and his eyes were completely black, devoid of any light. The vessel was empty because he needed a new one, the voice from Finch's mouth rasped. The Shadow King has returned. From Finch's body, a formless dark energy began to pour out, coalescing into a human-like shape. Akenra was reborn. Elena ran. She ran without looking back, the unholy laughter of the thing that was once Alistair Finch echoing across the desert. She is the only survivor, her testimony dismissed as the ravings of a traumatized mind. And so, somewhere out there, under the silent gaze of the Egyptian stars, an ancient evil now wears a modern face, free from its prison of stone. What does a sorcerer king want with the 21st century? we can only imagine. The sands of Egypt keep many secrets, and sometimes those secrets should be left buried. Thank you so much for joining me on this terrifying journey. What do you think happened to Elena? Let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next dive into the unknown. Stay curious and stay safe.